Welcome to the Exercise and Weight Loss Wellbeing webinar. My name is Phil Thompson. I'm a certified health coach here at Connect Care 3. I have my master's degree in exercise physiology. I'm also a certified strength conditioning specialist. A little bit more about my background. I've been working in the fitness industry for over 16 years as a fitness specialist. I taught at a local tech college for about 6 years, teaching classes like nutrition, strength conditioning, exercise physiology. And I spent a few years as a exercise physiologist in a bariatrics department. So today we're here to talk about exercise and weight loss. And in all reality, the presentation could be called the truth about weight loss. You should hear some things today that are probably very different from what you're used to hearing when it comes to exercise and weight loss. Now let's get started. So we all know there's a ton of health problems related to obesity, and that obesity essentially increases the risk of many different diseases: cardiovascular disease, certain cancers, diabetes, high blood pressure, high blood fats, osteoarthritis. They're all there. Don't need to go through each and every single one of them, but we know usually the more fat tissue we have, the higher chance we have for a lot of health risks. Understanding obesity, and the definitions get kind of like they get a little tricky. Overweight is any type of body weight that exceeds a standard weight for a given height and frame size. Terminology is not precise, especially because it does not account for body composition. That's a huge part of what we're going to talk about today. That your height and weight, in all reality, does not matter, because we don't know what it's composed of. Right? Obesity is excessive body fat in men over 25% and in women over 35%. We talked about height and weight in the last slide and how they use that to calculate what's called your body mass index, or BMI. Doctors still use it. Doctors will always use it because it's cheap, fast, and easy, non-invasive. To actually test someone's body fat percentage, which is the important part, how much body fat they actually have, it's pretty invasive and pretty expensive to have that done. It is possible and definitely worthwhile, but it won't be done at your typical checkup. You'd have to find a particular place to do that. But for the time being, they're still going to use BMI, and basically it's just your height and weight. So if you look at the left column there, you see the height. If you want to know what your BMI is right now, or have at least a rough idea, you go to your height. You go down until you find your height, and then you go to the right until you find your matching weight, and you go all the way up. And at the top, you see like obese, overweight, or normal. Now, like I said, in all honesty, it really doesn't matter, because this doesn't account for the differences between fat tissue and muscle tissue. Like there's no harm in being over 250 pounds if most is comprised of muscle tissue. So you've been told your whole life, calories in, calories out. I mean? As long as you burn more than you eat, you'll be fine. You'll lose weight. Everything's good. And that's not the whole case. You've been told probably for a large part of your life that to burn 1 pound of fat, that you need to expend 3,500 calories, right? 1 pound of fat equals 3,500 calories. And it's not the whole case. You probably have to burn closer to 4,500 calories to burn 1 pound of fat, because if we said that, okay, if I burn 3,500 calories, that's 1 pound of fat, that makes the assumption that everything you burn is fat, and that's not the case. You typically burn a mix of carbohydrates and fats. Now, certain things you can do to choose one over the other, but it gets to your exercise intensity and how long you're willing to spend exercising, all that. So the reason why I'm telling you this is because a lot of people like to do these calculations where, if I drop 250 calories from my diet and I exercise for 250 calories, that's 500 calories a day, and I should lose a pound a week. And, that's a good way of going about it, but then it gives you expectations that really aren't possible or attainable for a long period of time. It can't always work like that. Typically, I notice with fat loss, it works like a cyclical pattern where, like, you have to stay constant, and you see more drops like every couple of weeks. But you have to stay consistent. But individuals usually have a hard time staying consistent, moving past that week or two where they're not seeing any change on the scale. They get frustrated and kind of like lose that consistency with their exercise and nutrition. And they don't see that third week when it starts to actually pay off. Just to give you a rough idea, 1 mile walking or running on a flat surface burns about 100 calories. And I know you're going to say, well, running burns more calories than walking. And yes, because you can run a greater distance in the same amount of time that you can walk. As far as per unit distance, it's the same on a flat surface. And I know you're going to also probably think, well, the bigger the person, the more calories they burn walking. Not really, and it wouldn't be that many even if it was, because our body becomes highly efficient to move the body that we have. So unless a person like went from like not walking at all to starting to walk, like, okay, they might burn a little bit more because it's a highly inefficient exercise at that point. But typically we all have to move and walk in our day to some degree, so our body has become kind of efficient to it. One banana is about 125 calories, and I'm just giving you that example because I know a lot of us think, oh, if I walk 1 mile, I mean, I can see large amounts of weight loss, or all I have to do is walk more. And these things, we call it majoring the minors. And what I'm saying there is, we won't get the results we want by doing the things that we keep being told to do in terms of, as long as when you go to the grocery store, you go to the store, you park in the back, so you walk farther, and you take the stairs instead of the elevator. And that's focusing on a bunch of minor things, but you're typically doing that and not exercising. So you're missing the major part of it. So it's called focusing on the minors. And we miss a huge aspect of it, and we don't see the results we want. So how long do we continue doing that? And the reason why I bring up the banana thing here is because I know, again, you walk 1 mile and you come home and you have a banana, and now you're already in a caloric surplus. Not necessarily a bad thing, but something to keep in mind. So we use words like metabolism and calorie expenditure. So I always really like this depiction of it. So you see the biggest part that leads to our total energy expenditure is that resting metabolic rate, which makes up about 67% of our total energy expenditure. Lots of different things influence it: age, hormones, genetics, temperature, all that good stuff. But what has the largest effect on that is the lean body mass. So that's like your organ systems and your muscle tissue. So your muscle tissue is the one that you have the greatest influence on to try to rev up your metabolic rate. Another large part of that will be physical activity, which can make up 20 to 30%. And this is like your exercise session, but also what's called NEAT, so non-exercise activity. That's like your base. That would be like the parking farther away, taking the stairs, doing extra movements. Right, and you definitely want a combination of both when we're trying to lose weight. Because I know I know clients in the past that they would exercise like crazy, like hardcore, but then they would kind of lay around like slugs, wouldn't lose weight. And then I see the opposite, where somebody doesn't exercise, but they're constantly like doing other things, like they're doing all like focusing on the minors, they're not getting anywhere. Typically, it takes a combination of both. And how much you actually would burn in that would depend on your intensity, your duration, your type, and it says body mass there, but lean mass would probably play more of a role. To a small degree, you see diet-induced thermogenesis or thermal effect of food. This is where you've heard about how you should eat every couple hours to rev your metabolism. You grew up thinking that you should eat every few hours, and I mean, it's not necessarily true. Yes, it can cause a small increase in metabolism, but it depends highly on what you're eating. And I think that was never told to everyone enough. Because that's only certain foods. I mean, we were told, like I said, to eat every couple hours for your metabolism. And then we ended up getting high increases of type 2 diabetes. Because if you're eating carbohydrates every 2-3 hours, you're constantly having your body produce insulin, which makes it, you become desensitized to it, causing you to be become type 2 diabetic. So again, like depending on what you're eating, you'll get that thermic effect of food, which we'll talk about right here. So not all calories are created equal, and that's important. I know a lot of people like to do this thing where it's like, oh, as long as I stay under 1,200 calories, I'll lose weight. Well, let me ask you something. Let's take that 1,200 calories, and let's say we had two of you. One of you would eat 1,200 calories of pizza, and the other one would eat 1,200 calories of chicken and broccoli. Do you think they'd lose equal amounts of weight? No, of course not, right? So not all calories are created equal. We had good quality calories with the chicken and broccoli, not so great calories with the pizza. Because hormonally speaking, our body will do different things to process those foods. Well, not just hormonally speaking, but just in general, to break down and absorb food, our body has to do different things to do that depending on the macronutrient. And the three macronutrients are fat, protein, and carbohydrates. And now when we're talking about the thermic effect of food, I said it depends on what kind of food you're eating. This is what I'm talking about. So our body can break down and absorb fat very easy. So for example, for every 100 calories of fat, you burn about 0 to 3 calories to break down and absorb that fat. For carbohydrates, for every 100 calories you eat of carbohydrates, it takes about 3 to 5 calories to break that down. Carbohydrates break down very quickly into glucose. Funny enough, if you take like a piece of white bread or a saltine and you start to chew it, if you chew it long enough, you'll feel it you'll taste it getting sweeter in your mouth because carbohydrate breakdown actually starts in the mouth. It's something called salivary amylase. Hence why you typically get these spikes if you're eating particular carbohydrates. They digest much faster. Protein's the big one. This is the important one if you are trying to push for some type of thermic effect of food, meaning if that's a part of what you're trying to do daily, you want to make sure whatever you're eating every 2 to 3 hours has protein in it. Protein is very structural, and it's much harder to break down and use. So for every 100 calories of protein, it takes about 25 to 30 calories to break that down and use it. Okay. In all my years of teaching, this is one of my favorite things to show my students. So it really shows like the difference between fat and muscle. Because I know this presentation is called exercise and weight loss. And everybody's typically trying to lose weight, but you shouldn't be worried about losing weight. You should be worried about losing fat. And this is where you're going to start to hear things that should be very different from things you've heard before. But as you see in that picture there, that is 5 pounds of fat. That's the size of what 5 pounds of fat looks like. And that's also 5 pounds of muscle. Notice the change in the volume and the size of it. That's important to think about when we're losing weight or when we're not losing weight, depending on what we're doing, because we might be replacing it with muscle or we might be losing muscle. That's why a better indication of how your weight loss is going, instead of using the scale, typically going by how your clothes fit would be a much better indication, or at least a combination of the two. So here we go. Here's the crescendo. Here's what everybody's here to listen to. Okay. When I said about how everything you kind of probably heard your whole life, it's kind of wrong. You've been told your whole life to lose weight, salads and cardio, salads and cardio, salads and cardio. And it's not really the case. We haven't evolved very much since our caveman days, if you will. That our body cares about one thing above all else. It cares about survival. It does not care how you feel. It does not care about what you want to look like. It doesn't care about any of that. It doesn't care if you want to lose weight or be muscular or this or that. It just wants to survive. So our body will adapt to however we stress it to become better at surviving whatever that episode is or whatever's causing that stress, being physical, mental, all that good stuff. So what happens is when we go into a caloric deficit, all our body knows is, I require 3,000 calories to stay exactly how I am right now. I'm only getting 2,000 calories. in terms of long-term survival, not a good situation, right? So your body will immediately start to like almost kind of go into panic mode to a small degree and start thinking, okay, I need 3,000. I'm only getting 2,000. What can I do? How can I stretch this out? So the first thing it does is it starts looking around the body to see what's costing me a lot of calories that I'm not using, that I don't need. Kind of like this, like if you happen to lose your job, you start looking at all the bills you have. Well, do I really need a cable bill? Is that any essential for life? No, so you cut your cable. Your body's going to do the same thing. So what costs us a lot of calories, the first thing we'll go to is our body system, our organ systems. They're constantly breaking down food, absorbing it, using it, pumping blood, all of that good stuff. But your body knows I need that to survive. So can't get rid of that. We need that bill. All right. So what's second on the list? What's costing me the second most amount of calories? Your lean muscle tissue. Okay. Your body will prefer to take away its muscle tissue before it takes away fat. This is bad for several reasons. One, because it's going to lower your metabolism. It's going to make weight loss harder as you continue on. Two, it's going to probably increase your chance of becoming type 2 diabetic because we store a lot of glucose in that muscle. So the more muscle we have, the more glucose we can store, which means less likely to have it floating in the blood. And like I said about dropping your metabolism, so if you're only going by the scale, all you're doing is losing weight. You don't know how you're losing it. You could be losing muscle instead of fat, which is very likely the case. Dropping your metabolism low, and then what happens is they'll come back to haunt you in terms of regaining weight. We all heard yo-yo dieters, right? Oh, they lose weight and they gain it back. They lose weight, they gain it back. It's because they've been following this cardio salad thing because it's what they've been told their whole life. So how do we stop that? Because a lot of us in here could typically lose weight, but the problem most of the time is keeping it off. And this is why, because we typically, when we lose weight, we're losing that muscle tissue. How do we stop that? We trick the body into keeping it. So again, think about cavemen, or let's just start with athletes, okay? Professional athletes usually have what? Very fit bodies, right? Do they work out and train to have fit bodies, or do they work out and train to be very good at their sport? To be good at their sport, right? But they still have fit bodies. So why is that? Because their body is adapting to the demands it placed on it. So the workouts they're doing is geared towards being good at their sport, but their body thinks that's part of their everyday life, their need to survive. It doesn't know they're playing a sport. It thinks those movements, the exercise, all that stuff, is part of their everyday need to survive. I like to take it back to cavemen. Cavemen had to go long periods of time without eating at times, but they're still big, strong, and fast. Why? Everything our body does is to respond to stress. It's not like our body thinks, you think to yourself, oh, you know what? I want to be really fast. So you start sprinting and your body just knows, oh, you want to be really fast, so it becomes better. No, by sprinting, your body thinks that's a survival thing it needs to do. So it becomes better at doing it. You become faster. That's why cavemen were big, fast, and strong back in the day, because even at times when they weren't eating, they were still chasing prey and running away from predators. So they had to be fast, right? They were still, carrying animals, rocks, whatever, foraging, using that muscle tissue. That's hugely important because that tricks the body into keeping the muscle tissue. And that's exactly what we want to do. So we're in a caloric deficit. We want to trick the body into keeping the muscle tissue, because if you can't take the calories from our organ system, if you can't take it from muscle tissue, there's only one other place to take those calories from: body fat. And that's what we're trying to do. We want to lose body fat. So how do we do it in the modern day? It's definitely a little tougher. I mean, we don't have very active lifestyles typically. Hence why the gym is so important. Lifting weights, resistance training, any form of something like that. Because again, your body doesn't know that you're trying to get muscular. Your body just knows you're doing certain movements and you're doing it repeatedly on a daily or every other day basis, and it wants to be good at doing that. It thinks it's part of your everyday need to survive when you're lifting weights. So it tricks the body into keeping that muscle tissue, so you burn more of that fat, which is kind of the whole point. So resistance training is the key. And like I said, I was lucky enough to be a physiologist at a bariatric clinic for a while. And I was able to tell them this because we all know individuals that, yo-yo, they lose weight and gain weight, and bariatric patients is even more prevalent. And I know you're thinking, oh, well, those are bariatric patients. They're different from me or whatever. They're really not. All the surgery really does is, makes the stomach smaller. Physiologically speaking, very little difference, unless you get the Roux-en-Y, but even that won't make a difference in terms of in terms of like weight loss. But it essentially shrinks the stomach so they can't take in as many calories. I'm sure everybody out there knows someone that's had bariatric surgery, lost a ton of weight, and then started gaining it back or gained it all back within 5 years. And the problem is, it's because everything I just said. They were never told the importance of resistance training and maintaining their muscle tissue. So that's why, my time as a physiologist was very rewarding that I got to do that process in the very beginning to help individuals understand the importance of resistance training. And they would see so much better results than some of the people that were coming in that I didn't see in the beginning, but they're coming 3, 4, 5 years past, and now they've gained all their weight back after they already had the surgery. And it's a tough thing to go through. Two patients I had back then. Okay. Look at this individual. All they did was resistance train. They did no cardio after surgery. And this is their results right before surgery and then 1 year after. So if you look at the weight, you see they dropped close to 67 pounds there in that last column. Because that's the difference. Awesome, right? But if you look at the lean mass, they actually gained almost 21 pounds of lean mass. Fantastic. So if they gained 21 pounds of lean mass but lost 66 pounds off the scale, what does that mean for fat mass? It means fat mass had to go way down. So they actually technically lost over 87 pounds of fat. That is awesome. That is huge, right? You can see the BMI changed by about 10 points. Nothing huge, but definitely a change. But look at their body fat percentage. Cut their body fat percentage in half, down to 24%. Awesome. On the last row there, you see REE. It's a rough calculation for energy expenditure. It takes into account total body size, but mainly the main contributor being lean muscle tissue. As you see, because this individual does a good job of not only maintaining muscle, but gaining muscle, their metabolism only dropped by 30 calories per day. That's awesome. What's 30 calories? That's smelling a banana. That's nothing. This person, that weight loss that they had, they'll be able to sustain that weight loss fairly easily because they did the right things of not only keeping, but maintaining that muscle tissue. And it wasn't like this was the only case of it. This was normal in individuals that did this type of thing. The other side of the coin, this person only walked. They're only willing to walk. I told them all the information. I couldn't force anyone. That's not what I was there to do. I was just there to give them as much information as possible. So this individual, a little less than a year, lost almost 100 pounds. You see they lost 96 pounds. Fantastic. I'm sure the person's joints felt better psychologically. They probably felt great. But look at their lean mass. They lost close to 40 pounds of lean mass. That's quite substantial, as we'll see in a minute. Fat mass, they did lose 57 pounds, so that's great. You look at BMI, they lost 17 points off their BMI, which is 7 or 8 above the last person. But look at this. Look at their body fat percentage. Their body fat percentage only changed or dropped by 0.5%. Now, we know all the health risk that comes with obesity is due to the fat mass, not about total weight. So I'll ask you, this person's body fat percentage is still basically the same. Are they any healthier? Not really. They're essentially just a smaller version of what they were before. They said, yeah, they feel better psychologically, but in terms of health, they're not really any healthier. They're just a smaller version of what they were. And then the caveat, of course, if you look at their REE, so their energy expenditure per day, dropped by almost 500 calories per day. Now, 500 calories per day, that's huge. That means if they want to continue losing weight at the rate that they were, or at least as close to as possible, they'd have to walk an additional 5 miles a day. Who has time to walk 5 miles a day? Nobody. And all that will do is exacerbate the situation because they'll continue to lose muscle tissue. I remember I got to see this person several times. I kept saying, like, you really need to start resistance training. And by one of our last sessions, like that person, like there's only about 2.5 years post-op, they're already starting to kind of regain weight. And then that's rough because they essentially have a broken metabolism at that point. They've lost so much muscle tissue. And that's what becomes really like tough because we said how good they felt psychologically losing 100 pounds. Imagine starting to regain that weight. And there's not much you can do about it. And that is what happens. Because their metabolism drops so low because of the amount of lean mass that they lost. Again, their body is sinking survival. Just a side by side of the two patients. So I try to put this in a graph form to make it a little bit easier to understand of what happens. So when all we do is diet and cardio, and we're not keeping our muscle tissue, this graph kind of depicts a rough idea of what happens. So the blue bar is essentially metabolism, which it's obviously driven by lean muscle tissue. The yellow is your calories in, so how much you're eating, and then the red would be the deficit. So if you look at the first one there, we're taking in 1,200 calories, but we're creating a 1,200 calorie deficit, okay? But you notice at 2, they're losing weight, but they're losing muscle tissue, so the metabolism is dropping, so the deficit starts becoming a little bit less. As you go on through the numbers there, you finally get to 7, to where the metabolism has dropped so low that they're no longer in a deficit. So imagine now, we'll just pretend like those numbers represent months, because there's no actual time frame on it. It would depend on like how big your deficit was, how much muscle tissue you had, how strict you were being, all that stuff. So we're just gonna use months for an example here. But there's no set time frame. But let's pretend that there is a time frame for this. That at the 7-month mark, they're still eating the exact same diet they've been, and they've been losing all this weight. Nothing's changed with their diet. They're still eating the same things. They're eating the same amount, let's say chicken and broccoli for 1,200 calories. But now they're not losing weight anymore. And then you get to month 8, and now you're starting to regain weight on that same diet, even though you changed nothing. Right? How long are you going to stick to that? You're not. If you're going to gain weight eating 1,200 calories of chicken and broccoli, you're not going to stick to that. You're just going to kind of go off the deep end and have whatever you want, because what does it matter? You're gaining weight anyway. And this all could have been prevented by resistance training and keeping that muscle tissue and keeping that metabolism high. This is what causes that yo-yo, that drop in metabolism due to a loss of muscle tissue. And it can be prevented. I've seen it. I've had tons of patients at the bariatric clinic that did it, and clients throughout my years of training. I don't know why it's not talked about more, but that is the main emphasis of what I want to get through to today, is you need to keep your muscle tissue. You need to do some form of resistance training to lose fat tissue. That's what we're here to do. We want to lose fat tissue, not weight. And more importantly, keep it off. You can't spend your whole life trying to lose fat or lose weight. Right? You want to get to a certain point and then maintain for a while. And that'll be a presentation for another time about how to do that. Because you can't always be in a state of trying to lose weight. After a couple months, your body, even if you do everything right, after a certain amount of time, it could be a few months, depending on how lean you are, a few weeks, your body starts to fight you so hard that it's no longer worth to do it. So you kind of have to switch gears a little bit. But like I said, that's for another time. Just a small little, we'll go off topic to a certain degree. We'll talk barriers. Barriers to exercise and, barriers to resistance training. I know a big fear of individuals is resistance training is they don't want to get big and bulky. Everybody's afraid to get big and bulky, especially typically females. I don't want to look big and bulky. I never work in absolutes in terms of saying there's no way that can happen, it's impossible, or saying that will definitely happen. But it is so highly improbable that, like, I'm just telling you, you don't have to worry about it. You'd have to be hitting that gym pretty hard, hitting the resistance training really hard and eating quite a caloric surplus. And you'd have to do it intentionally. It wouldn't happen by accident. So I'm telling you, don't fear resistance training. Okay. Some big barriers. Time. Time's always the big one because we have family, we have work, we have obligations. And I get that. Um, but you have to pick and choose how to best use your time and be as efficient as possible. Motivation's a big barrier. If you're not motivated, I mean, there's no really getting past that, right? Energy is a big one. Like, I'm just so tired when I get home from work. I'm so tired when I get home from work that I just really can't do anything. Well, of course you're tired. Um, you're not doing anything to cause your body to adapt, right? I said your body will adapt to stress, become better at that. So if you go from working an 8-hour day to a 10-hour day, your body will become better at doing that. You'll get more energy because your body knows it needs to do it to survive. So same thing has to happen when you get home after an 8-hour shift. You just have to make yourself get through it. Start exercising. That's one of the first adaptations you'll see when you start exercising. Before you see weight loss, before you see anything else happen, you'll notice your energy levels change. And it happens very quickly. Okay? Lack of interest. Yeah, of course. And nobody's that interested in exercise. I'm a master's degree in exercise physiology. Even I would say I want to spend most of my life, thinking about working out all the time. You know what I mean? But I look at it as something that needs to be done. I mean, your health is either an investment or a bill, which takes me to my next one. Cost. If you usually say it's expensive to eat healthy, it really is. And, like you can make particular choices to do that. They say gym membership's too expensive, but then how often are you eating out? How often are you doing things like, how much are you spending on your cable bill? How many streaming services do you have? Right? Like it's something you have to think about, like where you want to go, what's important to you. Travel is a big one. Travel is one a little bit tougher, but there's always a possibility to get past that. You can find ways to do that. You can still find ways to exercise to be healthy. Being self-conscious is a big one, and that one I understand. It's tough if you don't feel great about yourself, and you're in a gym, and you think everybody's judging you. I'm telling you, they're not. No, nobody does that. I've been in fitness centers my whole life. Nobody really judges anybody. Everybody's just there to work on themselves. I mean, chances are, if you asked any fit person in the gym to help you with something, if how to work a machine or if you had a question, they'd be more than happy to do so. And I understand it's a hard thing to get over, but any type of behavior change or any type of life change that you're trying to make, you gotta get comfortable being uncomfortable. You can't do great things. You can't change things by doing the things that you're already doing, right? The ones that are the real tough ones for me here are that somebody's like waiting till they feel a little better. They're waiting until the weather gets a little better. They're waiting until they have more time. Oh, that's the worst one. Look back at your life. Okay. Have you ever gotten less busy? No. You're never going to gain more time. Okay. Something's always going to be there. All these barriers they're not really barriers. It's the lack of the ability to make something a priority. Like the time one is the easiest one because you know what? We all get 24 hours in the day. It's how you choose to spend that time. And yes, I know, I'm sure you have a family, you have a commute and all this stuff. At the end of the night, you want to spend time with your family. But if you're spending 3 hours of your family time huddled around one big screen while everyone's looking at their small little screens, how much value are you getting out of that family time? Would you not be better off taking 1 hour of those 3 hours and getting some exercise in? Or going to bed an hour earlier so you can wake up earlier and get the exercise in the morning. Okay. It's always going to be about priority. And the example I always like to use is I'm thinking of like those halftime competitions where someone has to throw a football through a small hole from 10 yards away. and they'll win $10,000, right? So let's pretend for a second that you're going to be given that opportunity. That 6 months from now, you're going to have an opportunity to throw a football to a small hole 10 yards away to win $10,000. Would you find 30 minutes a day to practice doing that? That equals up to 2,700 hours in that 6 months. I bet my bottom dollar you would. You would find at least 30 minutes a day to practice that because that's a big thing. But one throw for $10,000? We seem to make money a priority. And I'm not saying it shouldn't be, but health should still be one of our top priorities. And that just puts it in perspective right there. Let's just take your job, for example. If your boss came up to you and all of a sudden said, you know what, I need you to start coming in a half hour earlier. You're not going to get paid anymore, but I need you to start working a half hour earlier. If you don't like it, you can find a new job. If you're going to find a way to get up earlier to go there, even though you don't have enough time, motivation, energy, or not interested in it, yeah, I bet you're going to, because having that job is a priority because you need to make money. But you also need to be healthy. Start putting your health at higher up on your priority list. Where to start? These are some basic things. The first one I know is going to be controversial right from the start because it's COVID. And what I'm saying is do what you feel is best for you. You don't feel comfortable joining a fitness center, you don't have to. But do not think that you'll get the same results trying to do resistance training at home. Okay. The reason why I'm a big proponent of fitness centers or gyms is because the hardest part of the workout is typically that drive there. Once you drive there and you walk in there, you're going to exercise. You're going to do it. At home, it's very easy to get distracted. Another reason is equipment's expensive. And I know you're thinking, oh, well, no, I have these 3-pound dumbbells that are pink and they've been gathering dust in my corner. I'll start using those. Something I didn't touch on too much because we have a limited amount of time here is you need to use heavier weights. And as you get stronger, you have to continue using heavier weights. And I'm not talking like weights that you'll hurt yourself, but somewhere like in your 8 to 12 rep max. So a weight that you can lift 8 to 12 times will stimulate a good amount of muscle tissue. The heavier the weight, the more muscle tissue we use. The more muscle we use, the more we trick our body into keeping. It's the whole point, right? Trick our body into keeping that muscle tissue. And then I know like a lot of individuals will think, oh, well, I walk or I do cardio, so I'll keep a lot of muscle because I'm using my legs. You'll keep some muscle in your lower body for it, but you really won't keep as much as you think, and you won't keep any of the upper body. Your body will just take away the upper body muscle tissue. And in the lower body, think about it, as you lose weight, that's less resistance on your lower body, so less muscle tissue you're using there, and you'll start taking more of that. So it gets expensive to continue to buy equipment for to exercise at home. The next thing you're going to tell me is, well, I know a bunch of people that, they exercise at home and they're in great shape. And what about all these Instagram models and all this stuff, all these athletes, they work out at home and look at them. Yeah, those bodies were built in the gym after years and years and years. Once you get fit or get to where you want to be or get to wherever you are or wherever you want to be, it's easier to maintain. So you can start doing things kind of at home to help maintain that for the most part. But it's very hard to do it at home to get into that shape first. Not impossible, but very, very hard. Think of it as preseason for fat loss. So we know the importance of muscle tissue by now. If you guys know anything throughout this thing, you know how important it is to keep your muscle tissue. And you want to start, say like, you know what, I'm motivated. I want to start a healthier lifestyle. I want to lose as much fat as I can. Why not think about it first, about trying to put on as much muscle as possible? Again, you won't get big and bulky and crazy. But think about it in terms of money. Right? It's easier to maintain a certain amount of money if you already have a lot of money, right? Muscle tissue is the same thing. It'll be easier to maintain lots of muscle tissue if you have more. It's kind of like building yourself up, preparing for a fat loss phase, right? And by doing this, because your body is probably going to be new to it, chances are you just start resistance training, not even worrying about cardio or diet right away. Chances are you'll put on muscle tissue and lose fat at the same time. You can do that for a while because you essentially be it's a brand new training response to you. Your body will adapt. And it's fantastic. So take advantage of that early stuff. Those first like probably 3, 6, maybe even 3 to 6 months, maybe a year. You could probably just resistance train, gain muscle, and lose fat before you even start trying to concentrate on losing fat by having like a even tighter diet or starting to add in a little bit of cardio. Cardio isn't bad, or unless it's not that it's bad at all. But when you're doing cardio and not resistance training, you're just exacerbating the situation of losing muscle tissue. If you do cardio and you resistance train, now it's like intensified. Now you're going to lose even more fat and you're going to keep your muscle tissue. So everything you lose, all the extra that you're going to lose will be fat because you're doing all the right things to maintain that muscle tissue. So the biggest thing I can tell you, start resistance training. Focus on increasing lean mass. When you start this exercise, you start your exercise routine, avoid non-consecutive days of non-exercising. What I mean by that is if you take off, whenever you take off a day, make sure you exercise the next day. Don't take more than 1 day off in a row. Okay. We know once we take 2-3 days off, it's harder to get started again, right? That's why, like, if you're only going to exercise like 4 days a week, I typically tell people start Monday and Tuesday. Do Monday and Tuesday, and it gives you that flexibility. If you feel good and you want to go Wednesday, great. But if not, if you miss Wednesday, you still have Thursday and Friday to get that 4th day in. Most individuals, most of my clients, I tell them focus more on adding in healthy food as opposed to cutting out unhealthy foods. We hate depriving ourselves of anything because as soon as we have that mindset of like, oh, I can't have that, we want it more. Okay, just focus more on eating more good food like lean proteins, veggies, as opposed to cutting out the other stuff. And I know it's unpopular to say bad foods, but let's be honest, like chips, cookies, candy. As far as I'm concerned, like they're obviously not great foods. But you'll start seeing that stuff starting getting cut out a little bit without even trying. Avoid large caloric deficits. Try to get at least 8 hours of sleep. Stay busy. Try to not go longer than an hour of sitting. I prefer it to even be less than that. So if it is like your Saturday and you don't have much going on and you're doing a Netflix binge, after every single episode, get up and take a walk or change laundry over or do dishes and come right back and start the next episode. Even if you don't have to do anything, get up and walk to one end of the house and back and do the next episode. Just get up and get moving in between. That long period of inactivity makes it harder to get anything done. Do you ever notice that on weekends where like you have a ton of things to do, you can basically get them all done, but on those weekends where you only have one thing you have to do, it's very hard to get that one thing done if you don't do it right away. That once you start sitting around, you just keep kind of putting it off because, oh, it's the only thing I have to do. Keep putting it off, putting it off. A body in motion stays in motion. So long period of inactivity and sitting makes it harder to get up and get moving. So, and don't do the 2 episode thing. Don't say, oh, you know what, I'll do 2 walks after the next episode. Do it after every episode. Okay? Try to increase your lean protein intake. Try to pair food with a protein, meaning a carbohydrate or fat. Start on Sundays is a big one. Especially if we're changing our nutrition plan or even our exercise. I like everyone to start on Sundays if possible. Typically, everyone wants to start on a Monday. And what does that do? It gives us a little bit of anxiety, actually, because what else happens Monday? Work, right? So now we're going to start everything on Monday. And if we know we're starting a new exercise plan on Monday and we're starting a new nutrition plan on Monday, what are you more likely to do on Sunday? It's called Last Supper syndrome. You eat all the unhealthy foods that you think to yourself, oh, I'm not going to have this for a long time, so I'm going to have as much of this as I want. And you're going to eat all these things. And then you usually feel horrible. You go into a food coma. That usually lasts a day or 2. You don't feel great. Same thing in terms of exercise. Like, oh, I'm going to wake up early. I'm going to hit the gym tomorrow morning. So you do even less movement on Sunday thinking you're saving your energy. It's this weird subconscious thing that individuals do. That's why I tell everybody, start on Sunday. Even if it's just the exercise part, start on Sunday. If you haven't noticed it, and I'm sure you have, on days you exercise, it's always a little bit easier to eat a little bit healthier. And that's what we're trying to do on that Sunday. It just gets momentum rolling into your Monday. Imagine if you started your week on Sunday and then you exercise and started eating a little better Sunday and Monday. How good are you going to feel on Tuesday? As opposed to the opposite. When you wake up Monday morning after your food coma and your long period of inactivity and work, you know you're not going to do that. You know you're not going to exercise that day. Everything's going to get cut back. Like, oh, maybe I'll start tomorrow. Today just isn't a good day. And then, you don't start. And then now it's Wednesday. It's like, I might as well just wait till next week. And it just starts a vicious cycle that going forward. Try to have majority of your carbohydrates earlier in the day or around your workouts so we can use them the most. Drink water. Everybody knows that, right? I hope you enjoyed that part of it. I just want to take a minute and talk a little bit about Connect Care 3 services. Like I said, I'm a health coach for the chronic disease management and prevention team. We work with individuals that have already been diagnosed with either obesity, high blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes, or if they're worried about getting it. If you're going to doctor's offices and you're starting to notice that your weight's creeping up or your blood sugar's creeping up, but you don't have diabetes yet, you're not obese yet, there's something that you're worried about or you have a family history of, call us. Get started now. It is so much easier to prevent chronic disease than it is to try to manage it or fix it, right? And we're an employer. Your employer already pays for it, so you pay nothing, and it is confidential. So your employer will never know anything that goes on. They'll never even know that you joined us. I think it's crazy that we don't have enough, or we don't have a flood of people using the service because, like I said, it's already paid for, and it's just a fantastic service. We also have nurse navigation. What they do is anything if you've already been diagnosed with something, they can do a little more research. It can help you understand your diagnosis better with anything. They help you find specialists within your network. The health coaches here, we also deal with tobacco cessation. So anybody's trying to quit tobacco, smoking, chewing tobacco. I've had a lot of vape clients lately as well. And we also have a registered dietitian on staff. If you're at least thinking about it, call in, get started today. I'm telling you, you won't be sorry. I hope everybody enjoyed today's well-being webinar. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me, or if you're interested in starting with a health coach, a dietitian, or nurse navigator, please get started. You'll reach one of our patient advocates first, and then we'll kind of figure out what's the best path for you going forward. Okay? Have a great day. Thanks.